So we're Oncore Lesson 30, and we're still talking about division and multiplication using decimals. So the first thing that I'm going to look at is my directions, and I want to rewrite the problem so that the divisor is a whole number. My divisor is the number that I'm dividing into the other one. So if I have 8 9/10 divided by 62/100, originally that would be written out as 8 9/10 divided by 62/100. There's a reason I wrote it like this, because this is something that we're comfortable seeing, we're familiar with, and this is a very useful tool. So I want to know that the divisor is a whole number. First thing I need to do is I'm going to move my decimal 2 places over, and now that number becomes 62. But whatever I do to one of the numbers, I have to do to the other numbers. I move the decimal 2 places to the right here. I'm going to move it 1, 2 places to the right here. My new problem is 890 divided by 62. Just to show you how this works. Well, 62 goes into 89 one time. That's 62, and I'm left with 27. And I bring down 62 goes into 270 4 times, and I'm left with 248. And when I subtract them, I get 22. So I have 14 and 22 60-seconds. I know I can simplify 22 60-seconds, and I will divide it by 2 because that gives me 14 and 11 31st. And 1131, both prime numbers. There's my correct answer. Now, why do I do that? Why is that important? Well, if I were to leave this as is, and I'm going to go ahead and just erase this one, give myself a little side-by-side work here, right? I have 62/100 and divide by 8 9/10. Well, I know that 62 is somewhere close, 62/100, excuse me, is close to 50/100, which is close to 1/2. So 1/2 of 9, when I'm dividing it in, I'd end up with 18. So if I'm dividing by 9 into half pieces, I should say, I would get 18. And I know that I'm somewhere in the ballpark. So if I move my decimal over in both places, whatever I do to one number, I have to do to the other number. I can take a seemingly difficult task, such as these teeny tiny small numbers, and I can break it into a manageable division problem that I know how to do. I'll show you one more here real quick. So I have 2/10 divided into 21 5/100. And I want to make sure my divisor is a whole number. I'm going to move that over 1 decimal place, and whatever I do to one number, I do to the other. That's a phrase that you're going to start hearing more and more as we get into things like equivalent fractions, and we get into introduction to algebra and equations, those types of things. So I've moved my decimal over 1 place in both numbers. I can bring it straight up. Now, the next thing I'm going to rewrite it so it's a little easier for us to see here. Since I've done that, I no longer have 2/10 divided into 21 5/100. I actually have 2 divided into 210 5/10. That's really easier for me to do. So 2 goes into 2 one time. I'm left with 0. Bring down 1. I can't do it. I add a 0. I bring down my next number. 2 goes into 10 5 times. And that gives me 10. And I have leftover. I bring down my 5. 2 goes into 5 2 times. Oh, there's my decimal. I'm going to bring it straight up. And that gives me 4, and I'm left with 1. In this case, I already have a decimal working in the problem. I can't say 105 2/10 and 1/2. That doesn't make any sense. Your fractions and decimals together, and you'll just lose your mind. So I add a 0 and continue on. 2 goes into 10 5 times. And that gives me 0. So my correct answer is 105 25/100. Okay, so if you're already working on a decimal, you need to keep that decimal rolling. If you don't have an option and the directions haven't given you one, you can turn it into a fraction if you want. Now find the quotient. A quotient is the answer to a division problem. We're going to see that a lot too. And again, this is very simply just applying what we've already known, 8.75. Move your decimal over one place, and move your decimal over one place here. So I'm not going to draw the lines, I'm just going to rewrite the problem. Decimal comes over one place, 87 5/10 and 7. 7 goes into 8 one time, and that gives me 1 left over, bring down 17. 7 goes into 17 2 times, and now I have 17 minus 14, which gives me 3 left over. And I'm going to go ahead and bring down my 5, and 7 goes into 35 5 times. And my decimal's right here, bring that straight up, and I get 12.5. 12 and a half. Okay, so when you're dividing, don't forget, check your decimal placement, but if you're dividing with the decimal, you can turn it into a whole number by moving the fraction to both numbers an equal amount. I'm essentially multiplying by 10 or 100, but I need to do both numbers. I can't just move one, I have to move them both.